last time we ended in assembly view and we did a real world assembly after we printed the parts. Let's go back into Part Studio. We're going to repeat some of the tools that we've used before just to get repetition. We're going to knock out 3 separate parts today. So let's start with the tube, or the section of the tube that's going to connect the harness. It's also going to connect the top spar. We'll go to top view. So I was in isometric view. I left click on top inside the cube. That'll bring me to top view. I'm going to go over to sketch, and then I'm going to select the top plane. You notice it says sketch 3. We'll scroll over here, left click, center point circle, hover over the center of the top plane, left click, drag that out, left click on the dimension tool, left click on the outer portion of that circle, left click again, 0.73. And we could have done 0.74. We're just making it a little bit smaller because we're going to put threads on here. And you notice the threads from last time were 0.74. So the one we printed off last time was 0.74. And we had to take our tap and kind of clean out those threads so that part would fit in directly out of the printer. So I'm going to go 0.73 on this one. It's the only reason I went smaller. And we'll see if that fits better without having to clean up the part. Will it thread in? We'll try it out. You're always going to have shrinkage that occurs with the material that we're using. After it prints and cools, it'll shrink down. So that's why we're having to clean up these threads. Alright, so that is 0.73. So let's go ahead and left click on sketch 3, close that out. Left click over here on the cube. And let's go to front plane, just like we've done before. We're going to go over and hit left click on sketch again, left click on the front plane, left click on the line tool, come over, hover over the center, left click, once it highlights, drag that out, left click again, we're going to pull away, hit escape, left click on the dimension tool, left click on the line we just created, left click, 7.25 inches, that's how long we want it, and then we'll come over and left click on the sketch tool. I want to continue to highlight what buttons I'm using, especially for somebody that's brand new that's following along. It'll make it easier for them to watch the video, follow along with the process if they've never used the software before. Maybe they're not familiar with using a PC. We created our line. We're going to left click on the cube. We're going to go over to our sweep. We're going to left click on that circle we created. Come over and left click on swept path until it turns blue. Left click on the line tool. Now we've created that cylinder. Make sure it says solid new. Left click on the checkbox. We're going to go over here to our thread creator. Left click on that. Now, before you click this cylinder, what you can do, since that's fully threaded, just to speed up the calculation of the program, we're going to go distance on this, and we'll do 2 inch for the threads. We're going to do this twice. I'm going to come over, and now I'm going to click on that, and it speeds up that process. So I'm going to close that out. So there's our first set of threads. Now we want some on the other side. I'm going to come over to the thread creator again. This time we need to change the direction, so we want it on that end of the cylinder. We don't want it fully threaded, so we'll do distance again. We'll do 2 inches just to be consistent there. Alright, we'll come over. Now we'll click on the cylinder, and it places those threads on the other end. And we'll close that out. Now that we have our part created, let's go down here to part 3. Let's right click on that and let's rename. So this is going to be the top harness tube. That's what we're going to connect our harness to, since we just created it. I'll turn the one we created last video. Scroll that back. So if I left click on that and highlight it, it shows me what tools I used. So I used sweep, and then it also shows me that I used this thread creator, and above that, sketch 1 here was the sketch for that, and sketch 2 was the additional sketch. So it makes it, you can do it that way, and it'll save you from having to rename all of these. In the isometric view, let's left click. The next part we're going to create is going to go to that top harness tube, but it's going to also allow us to connect the spar. So we've got some additional features that we didn't do in the last part we're going to do in this one. All right, so we're in top view. Let's go over here to sketch, left click on sketch, left click on top view, left click on center point circle, hover over the center of the top view, left click on that, drag that out. We're going to need this to be an inch, but I'm going to hover over the center. You don't have to click on center point circle again. Hover over the center, left click, drag that out again, and then we'll come over, hit the dimension tool, left click on the outer part of that circle. Let's go 1 inch for that. Let's go to the center circle, left click on that, let's drag that out. We were close, 0.76 is what we wanted. All right, and then left click on the sketch. Let's go over here to the cube, left click on the front. We need to make a line, left click on sketch tool, left click on the plane, left click on the line tool, hover over the center, left click, drag that up, left click again, drag away, hit escape, left click on dimension tool, left click on that line again, drag it over to the side, hit 3 inches. That's how long we want this to be. And then left click on the sketch tool. Let's go back up. Let's go back to isometric view. So we're moving from plane view to isometric view. Let's go ahead and make this cylinder. So we'll go back to sweep, left click on that, make sure it's solid new, faces to sketch. We want both of those. Go over to where it says sweep path, left click on that, left click again on the line tool, and now we have our cylinder. Left click, check that mark. All right, that looks good. We're going to go over here to our cube, hit front plane. We're going to have to extrude some circles. Let's go create new sketch. Left click on sketch. Come over here, left click on the front plane. Left click on our circle, hover to the center. Let's drag up from that just a little bit. Left click and drag that out. These are going to be 1/4 inch. Now we're not going to thread these circles. These are for pins, and we won't actually make the pin for the model. But when we make our real world example out of metal, it'll tell us where the pin should be. So we'll have all of that printed out in our drawings that we use to construct the real frame. All right, hover over the center again. Let's drag this up somewhere right around here. Let's left click somewhere close to the center. We'll get these lined up in just a second. This one's going to be about 1/2 inch in diameter. Good, we got that. So now we're going to hover over the center. We're going to drag this one up. Let's left click here, drag that out. Good. So now let's resize these. Left click on the dimension tool, left click on the outer part of the circle, drag that away, and we'll make these 1/4 inch. So we'll have 1/4 inch pin or bolt if somebody wanted to use a bolt. Now we'll take the dimension tool, left click here, drag that out. We'll make that one 1/4 of an inch. We were close on that one too. We'll left click here. We'll make all of the measurements on this side the measurements of the diameter of the circle. And so this one will be 0.52 because we're actually going to have to thread this one. So we'll make this one a little bit larger so that when we thread something into it, we can make the threads a little smaller. All right, so these are not perfectly centered up, and we need them to kind of be centered up. We know this is 3 inches long, so we want this one in the center. But let's just start down here at the bottom. Dimension tool, left click the center of that circle, left click the outer line here, drag this out, and we'll put that at 1/4 of an inch from the side. That's where the pin's going to go. Let's left click the center point of that circle, left click this line again. Let's drag that one out, and we'll want that to be 1.5 to be away from the circle. And then we'll left click the center of this circle, left click this line. Let's bring it over here and let's go 0.25, so 1/4 of an inch from the side. So now all of those are lined up. Now we need to extrude, so let's left click on sketch 5. Let's go back to isometric view. So there's our sketch 5 that we just closed out. Let's left click on that to highlight those circles. Let's go up here to extrude. There we go, so those extruded out. We want solid, remove. We'll come down here to symmetric. So that made the holes that we can now thread. And we're not going to thread these smaller ones. They are just there for reference for the real world project. All right, I'm going to show you something. So if this issue ever happens to you, we might be able to do fully threaded. Let's try that first. Let's just do fully threaded. All right, so that should be, all right, no. Let's see if that'll, all right, so that did fully threaded all the way through. But you notice how these cross over? We don't want that. We want to be able to thread this circle here. So now, let's see if it'll let us extrude that through there after we've threaded it. Let's go back here. Let's go to extrude. Let's go solid remove. Let's see if it'll extrude through those threads. We want it to be symmetric. And it does. All right, so that is now extruded. Close that out. You've got to do your threads in a certain order or they'll interfere with the new threads that you're creating. Thread that side, let's thread this side, and close that out. There we go, good. That's what we want. Isometric view, so you can look at that. We don't need to thread these. So just to review, we did fully threaded, then we had to extrude again. All right, so now we've got that part. We're going to make this the top harness tube connection and spar connection. So top harness and spar connection. It's going to allow us to pin in the angle we need for the spar when we thread. This is going to be for the motor mount. It's going to have to be 16 inches long. Let's go left click on sketch. Let's go left click top plane. Notice this is our sketch 6. Left click center point circle. Hover over the center, left click, drag that out. Let's make this 0.73 because this is going to have to fit into something. Left click to close that sketch out. Come back to front view. Let's go to Sketch, left click on the front plane, left click on the line tool, hover over the center, left click, drag it out, left click again, pull away, hit escape, left click, dimension, left click on that line again once it highlights, drag it out. It needs to be 16 inches long. Close that out. Again, just repetition with what we've already done. That's why we're doing multiple parts in one video. Let's go to Sweep Tool, left click on that, Solid New, Faces to Sketch, we'll select the circle, left click on Swept Path, left click once the line highlights. Now we've made our cylinder. Now we've made the cylinder, left click. So before we do the threads, we're going to come up here and create a new sketch. We're going to select the front plane. We're going to come over to center point circle, left click on that, hover over the center, drag this up, left click, and make a circle here. And then we'll come up here, left click, make a circle here. Good. And we'll come over to the dimension tool. Now the reason we're doing this before we create the threads is because we need the appropriate distance for these bolt holes, because that's where our engine is going to be mounted. So we have to make sure our mount matches that bolting pattern. So I've got the measurements for that. Left click here on the center, left click down here on this line, drag it out, and we want this to be 5.125. And let's left click out here, and we need this to be 0.51. Same thing, same distance here. Left click on the center, we're still on the dimension tool. Left click on this line, we'll keep this on this side as well. 5.125 should get us there. Let's left click on this line, and we want that to be 0.51. There we go. So we're in isometric view. We're going to go down here. We're going to highlight the part. We're going to look for that sketch we just created. So let's highlight sketch 8. It's going to highlight those circles we just created. Let's go over to extrude. Left click on that. Solid. Remove. And we want symmetric. There we go. Close that out because these have to be different lengths. Left click on the thread tool. Let's down here at the bottom, so this indicates that it's going to be at this end. Let's go distance, and let's go 3 inches. And let's go over, left click on the cylinder. It'll thread that for us. Close that out. Left click on the thread creator again. This time we want it on this end, so we switch the ends. Come down, let's do it by distance, and this one we want 2 inches. This will allow us to pull these motor mounts out without having to take the whole frame apart. Left click on the cylinder, threads that for us, close that out. Spin the wheel on the mouse to zoom in, press the wheel to move it. Let's go to thread creator. Let's click on this side. Thread that hole. Good. Close that out. Press on the mouse again, the mouse wheel. Pull that up. Left click here. That should thread it. It tells us the size. We made it just larger than the bolts we're going to use. Symmetric view. Let's go down here to part 5. Let's rename that motor mount. Motor mounts, because we're going to have to print 2 of these off. We'll also have to print 2 of these off and then 1 of these. Let's right click on the motor mount. Let's go up and edit appearance, so when we go eventually to assembly view, our parts start to look a little different, so we can distinguish kind of where they go. Motor mounts, will change that color. Let's go up here and left click, edit appearance, and let's go to purple for this. And let's go for this one, edit appearance, and let's go for purple for that one. And I'll show you what those look like. Left click on that, that one's purple. We know these two go together. So when we get ready to assemble, let's right click on part 3 and let's hit export. And we're going to have to print off 2 of these, but we only have to export 1 copy of the STL file. Close that one out. Let's go up here, right click, left click to export. Again, STL file, binary, millimeters. Leave all those settings. All right, there goes that one. And then we'll turn this one on, right click, go into export. Now we've got our files, and now we can go and print these off. Next time we'll assemble these. So we'll come back to this screen. We'll assemble these on the computer. We'll print, and we'll also assemble real world for the next video.